Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1823B, and today's date is March 24th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Blockade Dismantled, Counting Down, Patriots Turn, Rats Scattering. Now, before I get started, I wanted to talk about the deep state. We know they continually push their goals, and we know that they try every trick in the book to scare the American people. And one of the best things you can invest in for your home and for your protection is a Patriot flashlight. Now, this flashlight is solar powered, so you're never going to waste money on batteries again. It has emergency strobe light, it has a USB port, it has a compass, rope, wire cutter, and a siren to ward off individuals. Patriot flashlight is the perfect gift for you and your family. Go to patriotflashlight.com, use the promo code X20, and get 20% off the Patriot flashlight. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, as of Friday, we see that Mueller released the report to Barr. Barr then, on Sunday, released a summary of that report to the American people, showing no Russian collusion, no obstruction. The mainstream media, they're trying to figure out how to spin this. I've seen some articles saying that, yes, there's no collusion, there's no crime, but the president is not exonerated. And they're trying to figure out some way, somehow, to explain why the Mueller report is not showing anything. Because remember, the mainstream media, since Trump came into office, for 2 years plus, all they've been saying is Russian collusion, Russian collusion. Now, they need to figure out a way on how to explain how there is no collusion in this report. And of course, they're saying, well, there's a lot more than just this report. Remember, they're the ones who put Mueller in this position, not talking about the mainstream media. Yes, they were part of it, but all these individuals, Schiff, Clapper, Brennan, Comey, the rest, Rosenstein, they're the ones who brought this guy in. They're the ones who said, yes, there's going to be indictments. Yes, Trump's children are going to be indicted. Yes, there's thousands of more indictments. And guess what? They were all wrong. All wrong. And now they're trying to figure out a way out of this. Their insurance policy, their blockade is gone. Guess what the rats are doing right now? They're scattering. They don't know what to do because it's all coming down around them. And there is a warning that we should all look at, because we understand with the Mueller report coming out, they used ammunition and they thought it was coming out at a certain time, and it didn't. And they used part of their ammo. Now we know the D-Class and the OIG report and everything else, all the investigations, the sealed indictments, all these things are coming out at different times. So they have their events, most likely, all set up for these different countdown times. And we know that once the big thing comes out, this is going to be the D-Class, the spying, the OIG report, and then even the bigger thing with Clinton and everything else, they're getting ready to push much larger events because they know they need to clog up the news cycles. And we see that they're in a bit of a panic right now. Now, before we get to Q's posts and what has been happening and what we can expect, we know that Trump right now, he's signing an executive order to protect free speech on college campuses, which I don't believe we ever needed because we have, the First Amendment. But we know the deep state, they've been pushing their agenda on college campuses, making up these free speech zones. And Trump says, something, this is ridiculous. This should not be like this. We need to reverse this. And of course, he can control what colleges do because they get aid, and he can withhold this aid. But what's very interesting about all of this is that the networks decided really not to broadcast this. Something about free speech. The networks, the news organizations, decided really not to broadcast this and skip over the executive order. Now, Don Jr. tweeted out the following. Of course they did. They don't want actual free speech, just their narrative as gospel. Network skips Trump executive order to protect free speech on college campuses. And they don't want anyone to know about this stuff. Because their agenda is not to have free speech. Yes, they try to use it for themselves when they need it, but they don't want everyone else having it. And talking about free speech, New Zealand, well, this is what they wanted for the United States. They wanted censorship. They wanted to be able to block certain sites. They wanted to ban weapons from the people. And basically what the deep state is doing is they're showing everyone this is what we were going to do to America. And they're not even finished with New Zealand. New Zealanders right now, they're debating the limits of free speech after their chief censored and banned a 74-page manifesto written by the shooter who is allegedly accused of killing 50 people at 2 mosques in the city of Christchurch. Now, the ban issued Saturday means anybody caught with a document on their computer could face up to 10 years in prison, while anyone caught sending it could face up to 14 years of prison. Now, think about this for a second. Why would they stop people from getting it or sending it or talking about it? Because it allows them to control what you see. Because this way, alternative media, other individuals that want to look into it, cannot. The only voice would be the mainstream media. The only voice would be the mainstream media that takes their orders from the intelligence deep state organizations. They would tell you what is going on, and nobody else would be allowed to. This is the model they were working on for the United States and really the world. So right now, the people of New Zealand are saying, wait a minute, this is going a little too far here. I mean, look what they're doing here. They're censoring things that we want to talk about, that we need to question. And again, this has been their plan all along. Now, out in Venezuela, we see that Russian troops, they have arrived in Venezuela. And we need to step back for a second, because we know that Trump, the Patriots, they're not looking for wars. They're looking for peace. And they use the tactics of the neocons and deep state to get their way. Now, the neocons and the deep state individuals, they believe that, yes, we have, free reign to do what we need to do, and Trump is on board with this, which is actually the opposite of what is happening. In Venezuela, Mark Rubio, Bolton, and the rest believe that it's just fair game in Venezuela. But what's really happening is the Patriots are pushing a completely different plan. Think about this for a second. How do you stop the neocons and the deep state from pushing their agenda in Venezuela? Well, you need something to block them. Can Trump come out and say, hey, listen, we don't want this to happen in Venezuela. We need everyone to stop this. We like Maduro. No. Because people would turn to him and say, whoa, wait, what are you doing? And the mainstream media would turn on him, and it wouldn't look good. Just like in Syria, when Trump fired missiles, it looked like he was going after Assad, but he wasn't. In Venezuela, I do believe that Trump, Putin, they were working on a plan to block the deep state and the neocons in Venezuela. So Trump allowed the neocons, the deep state, to do what they do best. To say, hey, look, we're trying to bring in humanitarian aid on a bridge that's been closed for many years, and we're pretending that Maduro just blocked it, and we're saying that Maduro and his forces set the truck on fire. Then it turns out the New York Times and the other mainstream media outlets, they had to walk back the story because it came out that it was actually the opposition that set the truck on fire. So they've been doing all these different things, pushing their agenda. Now Russia is getting involved. And all of a sudden, we have a block on what the neocons and the deep state can do in Venezuela. Think about Syria. Assad invited Russia in there. what happened to the entire mission before Trump even hit the scene? Russia was destroying the Islamic State. Russia was taking back town after town after town. Russia is now in Venezuela. They are a blockade for the neocons and the deep state. And what can Russia do at this point with Maduro? They can reach out and ask for peace talks. Do I think these are happening behind the scenes? I do believe that. And I believe that Russia is now there to push this agenda. Trump is not going to go to Venezuela, to Maduro, and ask for peace talks. I believe it's going to be the other way around. Now, Trump most likely will meet in the middle to make it look like they're cooperating. And we can see this happening in Syria. We can see it happening in North Korea. We can see it happening in Afghanistan. And we're going to see it happen in Venezuela. It's all part of the plan. So let's turn to Iran. Right now, the U.S. has placed additional sanctions on Iran. And they're saying, listen, we want to bargain. We want to talk. We want to renegotiate. So please come back to the negotiating table. And I think what's going to happen over time, Iran will eventually reach out and say, okay, let's start talking. Because they're going to see what is happening with Obama, what's happening with their nuclear deal, what's happening with everything, and they're going to start to realize everything is starting to collapse, and now would be a good time to come back to the negotiating table. If you notice, Trump waited for the perfect time to do this. They want Iran to see that everything that was set up with Obama is falling apart. These individuals, well, they're going to be brought up on charges. So this would be a fantastic time to negotiate. All the pieces are coming together right now. And we're starting to see this. Now, if we're talking about Syria, I do believe that Netanyahu, Putin, because remember how many trips Netanyahu made to see Putin in Russia about Syria? He made many. And we know that Trump spoke to Putin, Putin spoke to Assad. What were they all talking about? Well, we know that Israel is involved with the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda. They are pushing the agenda with the coalition forces, with the deep state, to take over Syria. We know that these paid mercenaries went back and forth into Israel. They fixed them up and then sent them back out. It was all part of the entire plan. And I believe the whole discussion revolved around giving everyone what they wanted. Syria wanted an end to a war. Syria wanted the deep state and all these terrorist groups out of Syria. Israel wanted the Golan Heights. Israel continually attacks Syria. I believe at this point, because Syria is now locked down, and I don't think that Putin is going to fire a missile at one of Israel's jets unless it's absolutely necessary. And actually, most of their jets stay out of Syria. They fire their missiles on the border in Lebanon. And I don't believe that Putin's going to fire a missile into Lebanon to hit one of these planes. And I believe what is happening right now is they all agreed on this plan. We will end the war in Syria. All troops will be withdrawn. The coalition forces, once the United States is gone, they will withdraw. Israel will no longer bomb Syria. Syria will become a sovereign country with an elected leader. It is already, but they agreed to this. Israel, in return for stopping the aggression, they agreed that they will get the Golan Heights. Trump, Putin, Assad, Netanyahu all agreed. Now, yes, Syria, they're going to make a big stink out of this. They're going to say, oh my God. But in the end, it was all part of the plan where they were going to end this ridiculous war in Syria. And not just end the war, but end the plan to separate the Middle East into Sunni, Shia, Alawite, and the rest. So we can see already the plan is now moving forward, and we're going to have peace in this area. Let's get into some of Q's posts here. Now, this is post 3161. Q gave us a earlier post, which is post 2681, and highlighted a certain area, and also highlighted a tweet by Live Breaking News. Now, the tweet says, developing, House Intel Committee Chair Adam Schiff says that the panel is willing to subpoena Robert Mueller to obtain a clearer picture of the contents of his report, CNN. And it says subpoena Robert Mueller in the tweet. Now, in the post, it also says the same exact thing, where the House Democrats are going to use a subpoena power to what? Go after Mueller. And this is a Q proof. Now, under this, Q says blockade removed. So right now, Adam Schiff is going to try to use a subpoena for Mueller. Q predicted this, and it is coming true. Because you have to remember, the blockade is gone now. Their insurance policy is gone. And they're trying to do whatever they possibly can to get their insurance policy back, to keep this alive long enough for them to maybe have an event or something. Chuck Ross tweeted out, and Chuck Ross was responding to Maggie Haberman's tweet. Let me just read Maggie Haberman's tweet. At Representative Adam Schiff on the report this AM on ABC, I think Mr. Giuliani would be wise to wait until the report is made public before making any pronouncements about vindication. And likewise, people should wait to determine just how incriminating it is. Chuck Ross said Adam Schiff, who announced 2 years ago that he's seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion that nobody else has seen. And the question is, has anyone heard from Adam Schiff? No. Don Jr. tweeted out the following. Has anyone heard from slimy Adam Schiff? No. I mean, it must be embarrassing to have spent the last 2 years as the leader of the tinfoil hat brigade and have it all come crashing down so quick. I'm legitimately concerned for his mental state. Do you think the rats are running? They're just, scurrying off? I believe so. Will they be back? Most likely. Post 3162 gives us everything from Post 3161 and gives us a Twitter link. This is from Trump. It says, it was announced today by the U.S. Treasury that additional large-scale sanctions would be added to those already existing sanctions on North Korea. I have today ordered the withdrawal of those additional sanctions. Now, we talked about this on Friday. Now, remember, Trump was in North Korea, called off all talks, saying he couldn't get anywhere, came back, the mainstream media went crazy. They're creating their missile site, they're going to fire the missiles, there was no deal, and they thought nothing was happening. But we knew behind the scenes that, yes, things were happening. They set up a liaison's office in North Korea. They're going to have people on the ground talking to Kim Jong-un. And Trump, he corresponds with Kim Jong-un by letter. They have no idea what's going on. And when I say they, I'm talking about the mainstream media, the intelligence organizations. They're in the dark. But we knew. We knew that peace was being pushed behind the scenes. This is why Q says Annans know. Yes, Annans knew already. So if Trump is saying that he ordered the withdrawal of those additional sanctions, that means Kim Jong-un, he is honoring their deal. And that deal, I should say, is to denuclearization of North Korea. Post 3163. In Annan, post 2681, this is a previous post, it had the countdown, minus 30, minus 45, minus 60, minus 90. Now remember, we're still having these countdowns because we have the D-class, we have the OIG report, we have the sealed indictments, we have the investigations. And remember, these are not exact. These are used for certain events. And they're not days. And there will be pauses. They're meant to trick the deep state into doing something. And they're also meant to spread disinformation so they can have these investigations, these reports come out at all different times where the deep state have no clue in how this is happening or when it's going to happen. But within this post, remember we said meeting with North Korea, denuclearization plan process, sanctions lift. Meats, subject, AB, food for people. So the sanctions were lifted to allow food to come in for the people. Down below, it's the Annan says, we knew. And Q says, at what point is it mathematically impossible? Well, at this point and all the other points, there is no question that Q is an inside person or a group of people that is giving us this information. Q says power is being returned to the people. The rule of law, this is all caps, rule of law, is being returned to our great land. Where we go one, we go all. Q. Post 3164, and Annan says, D-class is coming. Think about it. Blockade gone. Here come the fireworks. D-class. We need to remember that Q will use this information to keep the deep state off track. Q, Trump, the Patriots, they don't want the deep state understanding the exact date of when this is coming out. I do believe the deep state, they are planning another big event because they know what's coming. Look what they did with the Mueller report. They thought it was coming out on a certain day. They were completely wrong and they used their ammo. So Trump, as we know, has already ordered the declassification. And he did this last year with his statement. But Barr will now make the decision when this information will be released. Post 3165. Q says, they, in brackets and bold, thought it was coming last Friday. The countdown was used to make the deep state use their ammo. It worked. They paused the countdown. They had their event. It didn't come out when they thought it was going to come out. And Q, Patriots waited 1 week for it to come out, and there was nothing they could do to clog up the news cycle. And look, it came out this week. Q says ammunition spent. Q. Post 3166 gives us a Twitter link to Lisa Crowley, and this is Devin Nunes, and he says this is the unraveling of the biggest political scandal in American history. Take a listen.
My guess is it's probably going to be next week at some point. You know, we have no idea what's in there, of course, but I think what you're seeing tonight, Laura, is the unraveling of the biggest scandal in American history, the biggest political scandal in American history. I really believe what that is. I listened a little bit ago to what you were saying about the history of this, and I think people need to remember this actually likely dates back to late 2015, early 2016, and this began nothing more, nothing less than a Clinton-Obama operation with a bunch of dirty cops at the FBI and career Justice Department officials that were all part of it.
Let's move on to post 3167. And Annan noticed that Fox was reading a QAnon tweet on the news report. Newsweek picked it up and says, Fox News reporter quotes tweet from QAnon-related account on air. And the Annan says, cool, they're covering our movement. We are the news for sure now. Gave us the link to Newsweek. And in this article, it says, during the segment, Shimka said she was reading from another Twitter user, and the image on the screen showed a screenshot of one posted by QAnon76. And it said, do not for 1 second underestimate the significance of this executive order. Reads the tweet, thank you, POTUS, for reestablishing and preserving free speech rights for all students. Down below, Q says, the simple fact that this made the news, multiple articles, should tell you all you need to know. Number 2, RE attacked. Post-tracking sites now censoring, adjusting visitor counts. And this might have to do with QMAP. The QMAP owner came out on 8chan and said the following. QMAP owner here. Not sure if Q's post about post-tracking site refers to QMAP censoring, adjusting user accounts, but let me explain what happened past 2 days if it does. Resignation Annan was claiming on Twitter that he found a way to inflate QMAP's user count. He created a script that could create endless sessions, and he used it the other day when QMAP count jumped 200,000 rather quickly. I contacted him, did some testing, and it does look like he found a problem. So I spent hours yesterday trying to figure out a new way to represent online accounts. The old way was counting user sessions over the past 24 hours. The new way was to count unique users' IPs in the past 30 minutes instead of 24 hours. This has caused a lot of confusion, which I'm sorry about. I decided to just remove the counters for now. Last thing I want to do is interfere with the plan. Q says, panic. Q. Post 3168. And Annan put up a picture of all the different news anchors, Acosta, Meadows, and the rest, and gave us the Fox News link. And it says, FBI clash with Department of Justice over potential bias of source for surveillance warrant McCabe page text. The mainstream media seemed to suffer a collective shock Friday evening after the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller handed its final report of its Russia investigation to the Department of Justice, because they can't believe that this is coming out and there's no collusion. They already knew this beforehand. They already knew what was in the report. Q says their only defense is to play dumb, shocked and surprised, to avoid collusion claims. So the intelligence organizations, the Obama administration, and the mainstream media, they all colluded together. So the mainstream media is doing what they do best. They're acting shocked, and they're pretending they had no clue. The D-Class, the OIG report, will reveal that there was collusion among all of these organizations. Q says nobody walks away from this. Nobody. Q. Now, unequivocally, Amy at Bull Patriot responded to Lisa Crowley's tweet, and I thought this was very interesting. Put up a graphic, and it says, these mainstream media reporters took payments from Hillary advisors to deliver her talking points. And it says, since the start of Donald Trump's presidential campaign in 2016, these journalists have been relentlessly accusing him of collusion with Russia to sway the election. However, we have learned it was they who were taking payments from Hillary Clinton's advisors to deliver her talking points to the public. Americans were kept in the dark about her crimes against the American people and believe instead that Trump is illegitimate and not actively working for the betterment of the country, and listed all these individuals that are on the mainstream media channels. And it says the crimes of the people below are fully documented, and they will face justice for their gravest violation of journalistic ethics in history. And it's all those same reporters that everyone who is sleeping listens to. And they're all wrong. And the Russian collusion, the obstruction of justice, all turned out to be fake, phony, and false. And when these reports come out, they're all going to be implicated in all of this. Post 3169. Q says you are witnessing the collapse of the largest pre-planned and coordinated propaganda event in modern day history. Projection 101. And I don't think I have to say any more about that. Post 3170 gave us a Twitter link to The Independent. And it says 1 million protesters join historic march for second referendum, telling MPs, give the decision back to the people. Now, what are they talking about? This is the Brexit. The people have already decided. The people have already voted. But the government, they're not listening to the people. So 1 million people staged the biggest march in British history to demand a second referendum on the Brexit. Do they really need a second referendum? No. They're doing it because they're saying you're not listening to what we want. And we'll show you once again that we want a Brexit. Q says, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. See what Q did there? Theresa May, that's her name, Theresa May. And Q says Mayday. Mayday is an emergency procedure word used internationally as a distress signal in voice procedure radio communication. It is used to signal a life-threatening emergency primarily for aviators and mariners, but in some countries, local organizations such as firefighters, police forces, transportation organizations also use the term. The call is always given 3 times in a row, and Q did Mayday, 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 says democracy matters. The will of the people. Q is speaking to Theresa May, telling her to respect the original vote, the will of the people. They've already voted. They already told you what they want. They don't want what the EU is giving. Q says, united, not divided. Where we go one, we go all. Post 3171. Now, there's a spelling mistake here. It's Democrats, but it's Democrats. Haven't been this mad at Republicans since we freed their slaves. Post 3172. Q recognizes that there's a spelling mistake. Has a picture of Trump, and it says, my turn. And Q says, meme misspelled, but drives the point across. It is now the Patriots' turn. So what's happening here? Well, it looks like the deep state, the Dems, they will no longer be on the offensive. They'll be on the defensive. In post 3173, Annan says, all of us have been antsy for the hammer to drop, but we'll remember this time, the time before we knew the next big scene. This is historic. Q says, the calm before the storm. Well, the calm has ended. Justice is coming. What happens when a blockade threat is dismantled and removed? Q says, you'll find out. Children used as shields. Manufactured crimes of perjury. Fire at will, Commander. Q. Now that the blockade is gone, Trump and the Patriots will be firing the shots. We are now the offensive, and the mainstream media, the intelligence organization, Obama, Clinton, they are going on the defensive. Get ready for events, because they're going to have to change the narrative. Post 3174, Annan says, you may start your attack run. Post 3175 gives us the same exact thing before, fixed the spelling mistake, and says Democrats haven't been this mad at Republicans since we freed their slaves. Q says, why are they attempting to rewrite our history? D Party Con. You can run, but you can't hide. And that is absolutely true. Devin Nunes tweeted out the following. The Russian investigation was based on false pretenses, false intel, false media reports. House Intel found a year ago there was no evidence of collusion. And Democrats who falsely claim to have such evidence have needlessly provoked a terrible, more than 2-year-long crisis. Paul Sperry tweeted out the following. Breaking. Special Counsel Mueller clears all 4 Trump advisors on whom Comey, FBI open espionage investigations, Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, General Michael Flynn, and Paul Manafort, of coordinating or conspiring with Russia in hacking or trolling activities during election. Boom. No collusion there. No Russian collusion. Paul Sperry again. Breaking. President Trump calls for an investigation on the investigators, asserting this was an illegal takedown that failed. Then Trump finally tweeted out, no collusion, no obstruction, complete and total exoneration. Keep America great. So the Mueller report came out. Barr gave us a summary. The mainstream media is trying to spin it right now because they know what's going to happen next. Their firewall is gone. Their blockade is gone. The countdown continues. So with the completion of the Mueller investigation, it would appear that Trump can now declassify the documents as requested by Congress on September 6, 2018. Additionally, after the original declassification request, there were other documents added to the list. Perhaps it's time that we go over this a little bit. The first item is Carter Page FISA application, including specifically pages 10 through 12 and 17 through 34. And all the footnotes. This request was modified to include the last 22 pages of the third renewal of the FISA application, dated July 2016. The second item on the original request are of the Bruce Orr 302s, FBI notes from interviews and debriefing sessions, and other relevant documentation. The third batch of documents requested by Congress was all exculpatory evidence regarding Carter Page and others that was presented to the Gang of Eight, but not presented to the FISA court. The fourth request was for the unredacted scope memo authored by Rosenstein. Now that authorized the specific direction that Mueller was going to go in. The sixth item on the original request was for the release of the full and unredacted text messaging and communication between Page and Strzok. So we're going to see a lot happen here. The rats are starting to scurry away. They're going to regroup. And now the fun begins. It's the Patriots' turn. Get ready, get set. It's all coming out. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.